Picture a warm Saturday evening in Las Vegas. The Bellagio's Grand Ballroom has been transformed into a little corner of the Australian outback, khaki tablecloths, live animals wandering between guests, and the hum of 500 people who all love the same man. The third annual Steve Irwin Gala was everything it was supposed to be. Except for one empty chair. Bindi Irwin wasn't there. And the moment reporters caught up with Terri and Robert on the carpet, that absence became the only story anyone wanted to talk about. Terri spoke first. Her voice was gentle, a little worn from the long flight in from Brisbane. She told the cameras that Bindi was doing so much better now, but that travel had become genuinely difficult for her at this particular stage of her recovery. She'd be there next year, Terri promised. For now, she was staying close to home. Then came the line that broke the internet. Terri smiled with the kind of tired knowing that only a mother carries, and said it was actually less exhausting for Bindi to stay home and feed the crocodiles than to make the journey to Vegas. The room laughed. Social media did not. Because once you understand what feeding crocodiles actually means at Australia Zoo, that sentence hits completely differently. The Crocoseum is a 5,500-seat arena that Steve Irwin built with his own hands, the same arena where his memorial was held in 2006. When Terri said Bindi was home feeding crocodiles, she wasn't describing light housework. She was describing a young woman wrangling 14-foot saltwater predators in front of live audiences. The fact that this was somehow the easier option tells you everything about what Bindi has been quietly living through. Robert stepped in beside his mother and filled in the rest of the picture. Australia Zoo runs 500 staff members across roughly 500,000 acres of conservation land. Someone had to hold the fort. His sister, he said proudly, was doing a tremendous job of it. He smiled when he said it. But reporters could feel something underneath that smile, something he wasn't quite spelling out. Here's the truth that the gala carpet couldn't fully contain. Bindi has been fighting a war inside her own body for more than a decade. In March of 2023, she finally went public, posting a hospital bed photo on Instagram and writing about more than 10 years of unexplained pain, doctor visits, and scans that answered nothing. Her first surgery in New York removed 37 endometriosis lesions, and a cyst that had literally fused her ovary to her side. But endometriosis doesn't just go away. It comes back. And in the spring of 2025, it came back hard, on the worst possible night. The second annual Steve Irwin Gala. Bindi had planned to be there. She had packed her bags and pushed through the pain and tried to make it work. Then her surgeon delivered news that left no room for negotiation. Her appendix had to come out that night. Her health had to come first. She flew straight from Las Vegas to New York for emergency surgery. Less than an hour after it ended, she filmed a video from her hospital bed, calm, clear-eyed, and determined. Her appendix was gone. 14 new endometriosis lesions had been removed. A hernia from giving birth to her daughter had finally been repaired. When the full medical count was settled across both surgeries, the numbers were staggering. 51 endometriosis lesions in total. A chocolate cyst. An appendix, a postpartum hernia, all of it removed from one person who had spent years being told her pain was normal. By August of 2025, she wrote something that made her followers exhale for the first time in years. She said she could move through a regular day without wanting to pass out. She was beginning to recognize herself again. That recovery, fragile, hard one, and still ongoing, was exactly what Terri was guarding when she left Bindi home in 2026. And once the health update was out of the way, the carpet took a turn nobody was expecting. Reporters brought up a running joke that had been circulating for months. Robert had apparently launched an actual petition to get his mother onto the next season of Dancing with the Stars. Terri leaned into the microphone with perfect deadpan timing and announced she would review the petition and get back to them in 5 to 7 business days. The carpet erupted. Robert had told the Hollywood Reporter back in December of 2025 that he had personally started the campaign and that Terri was firmly refusing, but that he was going to wear her down no matter how long it took. His logic was simple. He hadn't known he could dance. Bindi hadn't known she could dance. Those genes had to come from somewhere. And since Steve Irwin, by all accounts, had been an athletic man with absolutely zero rhythm, the dancing clearly came from the maternal side. Then Terri's expression shifted, and the joke became something quieter and more honest. She said she felt genuinely honored to even be considered. She told the cameras that Bindi had once described dancing on that show as the closest thing to flying she had ever felt, euphoric and free in a way nothing else in her life had matched. Robert, sensing his opening, leaned in and promised the cameras he was going to make it happen on the next season no matter what. But this petition had deeper roots than most people on that carpet knew. To understand where it really came from, you have to go back to a television studio in Los Angeles, to a night when Robert sat on a couch and could barely get through a single sentence. It was mid-October of 2025. Week 5 of Dancing with the Stars. The episode was called Dedication Night, and every celebrity was asked to perform for someone who had shaped their life. Robert chose his mother. He sat in front of the camera and tried to explain what she meant to him, and the tears came before the words did. He had been 2 years old when his father died. As he grew up and began to understand what that loss actually meant, he realized the full weight of what his mother had carried, holding 2 children together, keeping the conservation mission alive, smiling through every public appearance even when smiling must have felt impossible. He danced a contemporary routine to the Phil Collins song from the Tarzan soundtrack. At the climax, Terri walked onto the floor in a yellow dress. Robert lifted her, twirled her, and folded into her arms as the music reached its peak. The judges wept openly. Bruno Tonioli told Robert his father was looking down and smiling. But the real moment came in the rehearsal footage, when Terri herself broke down on camera. She told producers that after losing Steve, learning to smile again had taken a very long time. And for Robert to say she had lifted him up felt completely backwards to her, because the truth was that her children were the reason she had been able to get out of bed every single morning. What happened a few weeks later would bring the whole family to tears all over again, and this time, in front of the entire nation. The 20th anniversary episode of the show aired in mid-November. Each couple was assigned a routine inspired by a legendary Mirrorball winning performance. Robert and his partner Whitney Carson drew Bindi's own freestyle from her season 21 victory in 2015. A foxtrot to Leona Lewis's Footprints in the Sand, the routine Bindi had originally danced in honor of her late father. The weight of that assignment is difficult to put into words. When the foxtrot aired, Bindi herself walked onto the floor at the end of the routine and pulled her brother and Whitney into an embrace. Projected images of Steve Irwin cradling a baby Robert filled the floor beneath their feet. Robert dropped to his knees in the middle of the ballroom, completely undone. The judges awarded the first perfect score of the entire season, a clean 40 out of 40. Bruno called it a poetic tribute. Derek Huff, barely holding himself together, called Robert this generation's beacon of joy. Prince William had recorded a personal video message for Robert that same night. In his confessional afterward, Robert admitted he hadn't known the footage of his father would appear. He said that every time he stepped onto that floor, he felt his father's message moving through him. By the time the finale came around in late November, Robert was running on fumes. Whitney revealed they had come close to falling apart after 11 brutal weeks of rehearsals. Robert had developed a rib injury that made breathing painful. Whitney quietly removed a lift from their freestyle that was tearing his body apart. They opened the finale with a quickstep, nailed a perfect 30 on an instant CHA, and closed the night with a freestyle blending black and gold by Sam Sparrow and the Knights by Avicii. When Alfonso Ribeiro finally said his name, Robert grabbed the microphone and told the crowd that his sister had been right. The show had changed his life forever. The numbers behind that win were historic. The finale pulled more than 9 million viewers, making it the highest-rated entertainment broadcast since the Oscars that year. Voting reached 72 million ballots, double the previous year's total. Robert became the youngest male winner in the show's history. He and Bindi became the first pair of siblings ever to both hold Mirrorball trophies. Terri, Bindi, Chandler, and 4-year-old Grace Warrior were all in the audience when it happened. Terri's Instagram post that night has since taken on the quality of a family letter. She thanked Robert for his heart, welcomed Whitney officially into the family, and reminded the world that even a zookeeper could learn to dance. 4 months later, back in that gilded Las Vegas ballroom, all of that pride came pouring back out. Access Hollywood asked Robert and Terri the question that has followed this family for 20 years. What would Steve think if he could see all of this? Terri's answer was pure Terri, warm and wry and sharp all at once. She said Steve would be genuinely amazed they were in Vegas at all. People forget, she said, how much real philanthropic work flows through this city. The conservation funding raised in Las Vegas ripples out across the entire world. Robert's answer was the one that got clipped and replayed across every entertainment platform on the internet. He said that every single day, a stranger finds him to share a story about how his father changed their life. 20 years on, that message isn't fading. It's growing louder. And the person most responsible for keeping it alive, he said, was standing right beside him. Terri earned the final laugh of the night. She told reporters that the one thing Robert had which Steve never possessed was a willingness to take his shirt off for wildlife. But beneath the laughter, Terri also said something that landed more quietly. She acknowledged that the road from 2006 to that stage had held a great deal of grief. And a great deal of work. And, she paused just long enough for it to matter, times of tremendous joy. There is one date already circled on every calendar in the Irwin household. 4 months from that Vegas gala, on the 4th of September, the family will mark 20 years to the day since Steve was killed by a stingray barb at Bat Reef. The whole conservation world is aware it's coming. Robert had spoken about that grief with unusual honesty earlier in the year on a CNN podcast with Anderson Cooper. He said he feels closest to his father when he is deep in the wilderness on a crocodile expedition, when a warmth settles around him without warning or explanation. He told Cooper that his grief and Bindi's are shaped differently. Bindi had years with their father that Robert never got to have. Her loss, he said, feels like a stab. His feels like a suffocating blanket that never quite lifts. He also told Cooper about the moment on his very first solo crocodile expedition in northern Australia when he caught a massive saltwater crocodile, only to discover it had already been tagged years earlier by his own father. He didn't have words for what that felt like. He didn't need them. Back on the carpet in Vegas, Robert closed with the same message he has carried into every room since the Mirrorball win. Keeping his father's spirit of passion and conservation and positivity alive wasn't just a personal honor. It was, he believed, something the next generation genuinely needed. His mother stood beside him. His sister was home feeding crocodiles. His niece is growing up in khaki. And somewhere in the Crocoseum, Steve Irwin's voice is still echoing off the walls.